So Patrick is back with us, and gangs and cat. I say that's a new title. So Patrick's presentation, and I just call it a hunch, but somehow I know that Max's is just going to roll on from this, even though there's no collusion. So Patrick's presentation is The Art of Resistance, Challenging the Consensus Reality. So ladies and gentlemen, Patrick Henningsen.
Okay. Testing, 1, 2. We're good? Yeah, good. Thank you for coming, everybody. It's great to see everybody. And a big round of applause to the man who just introduced me, because I look at this room and it's a lot bigger than last year and the year before, and that is a great testament to someone who's really stuck his neck out to make this event work. So Ian Crane, congratulations. When I saw the lineup, you had me right after dinner. I was worried because last night I saw the wine going, and I thought, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to do Anderson Cooper jokes for the first 15 minutes to lose. But that was good. That was a hard act to follow last year. I was right after a very energetic Australian lady with a liquidizer and a cement mixer, and I thought, gosh, I don't know how I'm gonna follow that one Graham, great presentation by Dr. Graham Downing last session. But I just tell you, I'm a proud, loyal follower of the old Nokia Banana, which is WAP enabled and has GPRS. So I've always used this phone. I love this phone. Okay. The Art of Resistance. It says in the program we're going to talk about media. And I could save you a whole hour. If you listen to my show, The Sunday Wire on Sunday, you know what my views are on the media, on the mainstream media, on all kinds of media. So I'll save you 2 hours. Just say that, well, I don't want to say it because I don't want to swear. But we do have to beep that out. We'll get to the media. The title is Art of Resistance. And I just went on a trip a couple of months ago, and I saw some amazing things. And rather than bash all the networks and newspapers for the first half hour, I want to share with you what I saw and what I learned over the last couple of months, which was very significant. However, just to prime you a little bit, this is our president in America, and this is at the White House Press Correspondents' Dinner, which was about a week and a half ago. And this is where all the intelligentsia and the glitterati of the media get together to pat themselves on the back for what a great job they've done for the last 12 months. And this is what the president said. I just want to play this, and I want you to file that in the back of your cerebral cortex.
At home and abroad, journalists, like all of you, engage in the dogged pursuit of informing citizens and holding leaders accountable and making our government of the people possible. And it's an enormous responsibility. And I realize it's an enormous challenge at a time when the economics of the business sometimes incentivize speed over depth, and when controversy and conflict are what most immediately attract readers and viewers. The good news is there's so many of you that are pushing against those trends. And as a citizen of this great democracy, I am grateful for that. For this is also a time around the world when some of the fundamental ideals of liberal democracies are under attack, and when notions of objectivity and of a free press and of facts and of evidence are trying to be undermined, or in some cases ignored entirely. And in such a climate, it's not enough just to give people a megaphone. And that's why your power and your responsibility to dig and to question and to counter distortions and untruths is more important than ever. Taking a stand on behalf of what is true does not require you shedding your objectivity. In fact, it is the essence of good journalism. It affirms the idea that the only way we can build consensus, the only way that we can move forward as a country, the only way we can help the world mend itself is by agreeing on a baseline of facts when it comes to the challenges that confront us all. So this night is a testament to all of you who've devoted your lives to that idea, who push to shine a light on the truth every single day. So I want to close my final White House Correspondents' Dinner by just saying thank you. I'm very proud of what you've done. It has been an honor and a privilege to work side by side with you to strengthen our democracy. And with that, I just have two more words to say. Obama out.
Thank God for that. Okay, so our dear leader just gave away the game. He said we need to establish a baseline of facts that we all need to agree on, a consensus, okay? That is exactly in the title of this talk. What he's talking about is consensus reality. And this is a term I've been using for a few years now. And this is what governs our public perception, at least in terms of media, and absolutely in terms of our political life, okay? Consensus reality is this is the currency that the BBC trades in, okay? This is their main currency, consensus reality. This is what Al Jazeera trades in. This is what CNN trades in. And all these networks, they're coordinated. If you do flip the channels at the right time of the night, you will see the talking points are identical. You'll see the agenda is the same. And so therefore the effect on the general population is seamless. It's completely coordinated. That is consensus reality. And all you have to do is on your cigarette break or at lunch and you're talking about whatever's going on in the world with your work colleagues or whatever, or cab driver, which I do all the time, talk to the cab drivers. I say, what do you think about Syria? Ooh, that Bashar al-Assad, he's a bad bloke, isn't he? He's got to go. And I said, well, how did you come to that conclusion? Well, it's all the people he's killed and everything like that. So this is typical consensus reality. This person is just repeating what they've seen on the news or what they've seen in the headlines. Simple. It's that simple. So this is perception management. And Vanessa's talk, the 2 talks ago, dealt with the intricacies of how that's achieved, okay? I'm talking more about the psychology of mass media. Peer pressure is very important, and I'm going to talk about that in relation to the U.S. elections later on. And infotainment. So more news anchors are doing cameos in films right now and on television, playing themselves in dramatic productions. Then I can't believe it, how many I'm seeing. From Christiane Amanpour from CNN, Wolf Blitzer, Anderson Cooper, Bill O'Reilly, everybody. Infotainment. So black propaganda. There's different types of propaganda. But we are seeing right now, we're living in an age where you are literally being given on a plate absolutely unadulterated black propaganda through the media. It's never been so clear. And celebrity politics. Our politicians are now celebrities. If you're old enough to remember when that wasn't the case, some of you are, but this is not the way it is now. Now they are celebrities, bona fide celebrities. They're treated like celebrities by the media. President Obama says, it's great working hand in hand with you. I thought the press was supposed to be the watchdog. I don't want to be working hand in hand with the government. My job is, or if I was in the media, it would be to take them to task. It would be to make their life very difficult and very uncomfortable. So the fourth estate has become a fifth column. That's the reality of what you're living in today, okay? And I'll show you why. So we'll get into that later. So I took a trip, thanks to the generosity of a few of our readers and listeners. They put me on a plane to the Middle East, and originally we were going to try to go to Damascus. For some reason, I was denied. They put a stop on all American visas that week, so I had to stay in Beirut. And if you're not familiar with Lebanon, just a quick geography lesson. It's about the size. It's I don't know, twice the size of Wales, something like that. Yeah, so little bit bigger than New Jersey, but within that you have up to, by some people's estimation, 4.5 million people. Okay, very densely populated in the cities, especially Beirut, and it's a fascinating country, and I encourage anybody to go visit if they feel so inclined. The first thing you notice when you arrive in Lebanon is a heavy UN presence, and you'll see this in a lot of different pockets, including a very large UN compound downtown, which I'll show you in a bit. It's primarily run on a second-hand economy. This is one of the big driving parts of the economy. So you see a lot of old American cars. I love old cars, so it's a fascinating place. It almost feels like it's pre-internet. But it is advanced in the 21st century, but it's got a little bit of a beatnik, remnant culture there as well. So it's really interesting. And I saw this in a roundabout when I was on my way to visit a market. And so this is right opposite the Iranian Cultural Center, which was bombed by ISIS in February 2014, 2 years ago, supposedly. And it was a double bomb, I think. And they left the car there as a reminder. So this is interesting. This wouldn't happen here, obviously, or in any country. But in Lebanon, they have a very interesting way of managing things and dealing with certain things. But it was quite striking to see right in the middle of the circus, the roundabout, was this car. And the other thing you notice, I had to show that this is the obligatory cat picture, but this is straight out of Jamaizi. This bad boy came up to me in a cafe when I was having lunch on my last day, and I saw he's sitting in the eye, or his eyes closed up. But there's a lot of street cats in Beirut, so it's a little bit wild in that respect. Most people think Lebanon's a Muslim country. It does have a lot of Muslims there, but it's not a Muslim country. It's a very mixed country in terms of religion, ethnic mix, and so forth. And you have a lot of contradictions there, side by side. It is all facing up right against each other. You have the evocative advert. There's the Hariri Mosque in the background. I turn around 45 degrees and I see this, a Coptic Christian cathedral right there, 1 block away. And I turn around another 15 degrees, I see this scene. This is an old church that was bombed out during the Lebanese not-so-civil war, and it might get reconstructed one day. It's been sitting like that for probably 30 years or more. And you see a lot of cranes feature in here. I'll talk about that. There's registered Syrian refugees in Lebanon, probably about 1.5 million. They've absorbed 1.5 million refugees since the Troubles began in Syria in 2011. 1.5 million in a place that's a little bigger than Wales, okay? They laugh in a way that we're freaking out over 100,000 or so, or 200,000 even, refugees coming into Europe from the Middle East or Afghanistan for the migrant crisis. They already had their migrant crisis, and they're coping with it. They're dealing with it. They're getting on with it and making the best of it. They're not freaking out and losing it. And right-wing fascist mobs aren't appearing out of thin air in Lebanon to protest against the foreigners, okay? We can learn a thing or two from these people from this very small, developing country, okay? But on paper, Those are just the registered Syrian refugees from next door. Add 1 million, 2.5 million. That's over half the population of the country. It's not easy. It's put a lot of load on the system, but they're dealing with it. I think this is a really important point to put in our heads when we're watching the news. Okay? Now, so I put together a radio studio, and I wanted one that I could fit in my backpack. And I wanted to be able to broadcast live, and I wanted to be able to take that and go to my guests. I can't even do that when I broadcast in America because I'm kind of isolated. But so we did. We came up with a solution, and I wanted to do it for under, I don't know, $600, $700 or something like that. And it ended up costing about $1,000. But we got it, and it worked. And I did 4 weeks of live broadcast in Lebanon. And I met some of the most fantastic journalists and geopolitical analysts in Beirut. That city has more great journalists and great academics and great thinkers as much as any city. It's a phenomenal place to go and tap into. So I basically just went from person to person, a little bit of Facebook, a little bit of networking. And this is Marwa Osman. She's a journalist and an analyst. She has her own television show in the Middle East. She's young. I think she's probably about 30, 31 or something like that. Phenomenal analyst. Brilliant. And she came up to our little temporary studio on the top of a building in downtown Beirut. And this was Dr. Rizik. He is a great historian. He cares deeply about his country. And he struggles, as everyone does in that part of the world, with all the sectarian issues and the history. And he left the country during the Civil War. Family went to Australia, and he came back years later after the troubles calmed down. But came back to a very different country, which I'll show you in a minute. This is Habib Battah, editor of the Beirut Report, probably one of the greatest journalists I've ever had on my show. He's a mainstream journalist. His work is fantastic. And he's really fought the hard fight for local issues in the Middle East and in Beirut in particular. I had him 1 week. And then I spent a lot of time meeting students and talking with students. And I wanted to connect with some of the students who are studying media and journalism. And one of them, I was interviewing him down in Tyre. This is a very old city in the south of Lebanon, and he had a Led Zeppelin t-shirt on. So I thought, oh, okay, this in a little ponytail, so I thought, okay, kindred spirit. So I went and talked to this guy, and then I was just like, talking about the scenes and what's going on. And I said, what's going on in the music scene? And he said, oh, there's a band from Syria called Pressure Pot. I can't pronounce them in Arabic. And he said that they're really on the money, and this is you got to go check these guys out. And so I looked him up and got in touch with him, and this is the drummer who I got on the show on I think week 4. And they're from Damascus. They left because of the war, and they're based in Beirut. Great musicians, great guys. And we got to talk music for an hour and a half, which is unusual. So I enjoyed that. But it was really a chance meeting. It was a chance meeting. But it came out really good. And I did a couple of segments for Crosstalk on RT from Beirut, which was interesting. And this is a rare picture off camera, which you'll never see, which is Peter joking around, Peter Lavelle, the host, normally very serious and a great moderator. One of the other things I did while I was over there was I got a chance to talk to some classes and do some lecturing. And these are students in Byblos, another very old city in the north of Beirut. And I talked about, what I did a paper on recently, which is what Vanessa was talking about, basically the last talk, smart power in the human rights industry. And so I got a chance to present this idea to these students. And the teacher told me, they don't normally engage a lot with some of these topics. Some of them are shy. They might not ask questions. The hands started flying up after about a half-hour presentation. And they wanted to know a lot of things, very engaged. Very talented. This was more of a Christian university in terms of its demographic, but nonetheless very interested in NGOs and what's going on behind the scenes, how it's affecting them, how foreign policy is affecting them. And I find this all across a lot of places in the Middle East. People are getting very smart very fast to what has transpired over the last 100 years, maybe where they couldn't before because there was disruptions in places like Lebanon. As it settled, they've advanced in their awareness of geopolitical affairs very rapidly, and it was refreshing. So I was told by some people, oh, don't go to the Palestinian refugee camps, Sabra and Shatila. It might be a little bit dangerous. There's reports of terrorists hiding out there and so forth. Anyway, so I went, and as I saw the burned out cars, this was nearby the refugee camp, and I was with my my guide, if you will, as a friend, a Nigerian woman, lovely young lady, and then I heard this, you know, Kalashnikov or something. You could hear it in the distance. I was like, oh, maybe this isn't a good day to go. And she said, oh, don't worry, it's probably a wedding. Or Hazran Nasrallah just made a speech or something on TV. So anyway, this was an incredible experience because this is the most densely populated place I've ever seen in my life. Maybe 300,000 people living in an area much smaller than a square mile, I would say. Incredible. You can see Yasser Arafat there holding court still over the street. Lots of wires, people doing their own electricity. I didn't go off the market too much, but it was an interesting experience. Really nice people in there, very friendly. And mostly the refugee camps, a lot of Syrians have moved in because, you know, tried to work and so forth. So it's not completely Palestinian anymore. And some might say it's majority Syrian in some of these refugee camps, especially the big ones. So here's what I was interested in. I'd love, my background's in art and design, if people aren't aware of that. I wasn't trained as a journalist or anything like this. But I always look at things, and I pay attention to stuff on the wall. I look at advertisements. I look at graffiti, which I'm going to show you in a minute. And, you know, these are fly postings, and you see this all over Beirut. And this is layers of history, of recent history. Of course, if you go a little bit lower, under the foundations of these buildings, you will see civilizations. You'll see all the way from Babylonian, Phoenician, Roman, Greek, Byzantine, one after another. They're all layered like this. Alexander the Great in there. This is an incredible place. There's very few places like it. I think it's very unique because of its geography, that it's gone through all these changes, has been overrun, has been repelled invaders, taken on invaders, the Crusades, etc. And now there's been a recent crusades in the last 50 years. So it's an odd place. This is not an uncommon scene. So this is, I kind of like it. Maybe some Lebanese aren't really into it, but I think it's kind of cool. This is down by the university. It's an interesting place to walk around. But it's a great place for graffiti artists. And this here I took in March, end of March, and that was gone. That was gone. The whole structure there was gone by the time I left at the end of April. The amount of building projects going on there is unbelievable. It never stops. It's incredible. That's not such a good thing, which I'll show you in a minute. But some of the artists are amazing. I can't translate this in Arabic. I translated some other stuff, but the variety, it's incredible. It's incredible. You know, there's not many museums in Beirut, but you get an incredible art experience. But there's messages. Someone's speaking to us through the graffiti. Many people, many voices. And it goes back decades. And they leave some of the old stuff up, which I'll show you. But you know, to get into the mind of the Middle Eastern artist is incredible. So you'll see different layers of political activism, movements, National Union of Anarchists. There's still the remnants of this, too, communist. Not so much anymore, but still there. And you see this. So these artists have, this is their cathartic way of dealing with recent history, which is, in a country that is so plagued with sectarian division and political differences, so these artists have found an outlet in the dilapidated, and there's a lot of spaces to do graffiti in this city. This one I like. Shway means sort of, right? In Arabic, so keep calm, sort of, They have a saying there, everything's fine until it isn't. And that's how society goes. But very clever. And then you turn around the corner and you see something like this. And wow. So it very, very deep, very diverse. And I'm showing you some of these things because the Western media projects a very simplistic, almost, third world, not too sophisticated, maybe slightly savage and barbaric. White man's burden is we need to go in there and sort them out and help Johnny Arab. This is the mentality when you watch mainstream media. They don't tell you about this. This is the norm. They are as sensitive and creative, and they have a vision for the future, which might be harder to obtain, or to have a society like many of us enjoy. And you see this. That's sort of the Banksy. This might be a Banksy, actually. I'm not sure. It could be, yeah. It's in Jamaica, I think. And you see the gun up there in the corner. I think, or the close-up of that. It says, "Not violence," not, as in tie the knot. And you see that stencil around in different places around the city. They had a garbage crisis. So the government contract was up, and no one lined up they didn't have anyone lined up to take over the next contract last year, so they left all the garbage out. Horrific scandal, and even worse for the residents. And so the artists got involved with that, and you see this. I mean, this is brilliant. I'd say that's about 8 feet tall along one of the freeways heading up to Byblos. Weapons of mass distraction. See a little television set. In Arabic, I think someone translated to me as something along the lines of some of the writing said 9 out of 10 politicians are criminals. Above that. I missed that part, but my friend showed it to me. And I was walking through a parking lot, and I saw this, just tucked away in the corner. These are bullet holes. You see them everywhere from when there was heavy fighting in Beirut. I could show you lots of buildings with bullet holes in them and tank mortar shells, and I saw this, and it said "Drop Dead," spray painted below it. And I thought, wow. And it's in red, white, and blue. So there could be a deeper meaning there. But you can't get this in museums. You can't get this. I haven't even seen half this stuff in books. Because maybe people aren't so keen to show this side. I might do a book about this. Who knows? Now this building is interesting. This was right along some of the heavy fighting. And a lot of these have been commandeered by the military because of their strategic position. Because they learned that this isn't going to happen again in Beirut. So the military and the police and security services have occupied certain buildings. And the Syrian army actually occupied quite a few of these buildings during that multi-front internal conflict. But if you do a close-up, I zoom in a little bit, and you see this. I don't know how they got down that building. They probably rappelled or used bungee cords or something. But amazing. And there's a bullet hole just above this window. This is on the drive up to Junye. But it's gorgeous. It's a really dilapidated building, but you see a lot of this. And it's just kind of in a place that looks very depressing on the surface in some places. You see something beautiful and colorful like this, and it sort of lifts your spirits a little bit. I want to point this out. This is an international affair. So they're artists, graffiti artists coming from all over the world there. sharing and doing stuff together. So, you know, people give the millennials a hard time. So a lot of people ripping on the millennials. They're this, that, and the other. But, you know, I have a lot of faith in the millennials because they're going to inherit the world that we've left them for the last half a century. So I've got a lot of faith in millennials. So, but we need to obviously be there in the conversation with them. But it's a reality. Globalization is a reality. It can't be dialed back. And there's parts of it that are just not good and are counterproductive in many ways, destructive in many ways, but it is a reality. And we have to accept that to some degree if we're going to help shape it. Unfortunately for some people, and fortunately for others, it's just the way it is. And I think you really see that clearly when you go to a place like this, that is dependent on foreign imports as a result of the war. The manufacturing sector, a lot of it got knocked out. That's what's happening in Syria, by the way. Along northern Syria, factories being dismantled, equipment taken to Turkey, whatever they couldn't carry, they blew it up. There's a reason for that. So this isn't about religion, it's not about ISIS. It's about destroying the economy to make it and soften society so you can go in and rebuild it. It's about money and power and making these states dependent on the globalized system so they can't be self-sufficient. That's exactly what Syria is about. It's one of the main components along with the energy. This is one of the graffiti artists' names, Exist, and I got a chance to meet some of them there, and great artists. Very, amazing. And Stockholm Syndrome. So, you know, the level of sophistication on the street, it's incredible. Destroy the mainstream. This is off Hammer Street, one of the main shopping streets. But you see stuff like this, and wow. Just below this was 3 old guys just kind of making their own coffee, sitting there. So the council doesn't come and kick them off the street if they're sitting out in the, you know, and there's no parking attendants writing tickets there, which is nice, I have to admit. So in many ways, I'll just say, people in this country, which is essentially under martial law, the soldiers are on the street doing policing and securing all the access points. But some of the people have a lot more freedom. I'm talking about minute-to-minute freedom than we have. You can't even put, if you have a cafe in the UK, you can't put a table and chairs out on the sidewalk without having to get a license from the council, and you got to pay for that, $700 per year, or they charge you by the chair, I think. But so they don't have they have syndicates in Lebanon, but I think we actually pay more with our syndicates here. But our government does a syndicate, and the rackets are run by the state here. That's the only difference. So, but you see some beautiful buildings, gorgeous French colonial era buildings. These have all been, funny enough, they're all uninhabited. They've all been shot to bits, and no one's rebuilding them or refurbishing them. Now, something like this would be prime property for a European. I'd love to live in a beautiful classic building. But there is an agenda to destroy history and to rebuild glass tower blocks in its place. Okay, this is a very real agenda. And I think, personally, this is one of the agendas, multi-billion-dollar generational agendas that fueled the Lebanese Civil War. That's just my personal opinion, because I see the results of it. Gulf money coming in to build these skyscrapers to create little pockets of Dubai in Lebanon. So I got into one of these houses, and there's tons of them, and then there's graffiti on the walls, and I'm reading this stuff. It's just amazing. No justice, no peace, hate war, and I saw some great stuff. This is in Homs in Syria. This is taken recently. So you know what's coming next. I know what's coming next because I've seen it in Lebanon. Lebanon had its Syria in the 70s, 80s, part of the 90s. This is the agenda. That's going to be flattened, modern tower blocks. Okay, we'll get to that. So, who's behind all this rebuilding? This was a scene. This picture says it all. And this is a common sight. I was just walking there and I'm like, wow, gorgeous old building with iron balustrades. Beautiful. I think, wow, I'd love to be out having a coffee in the morning on that terrace. Obviously, with not looking at that. But that's just my vision, my dream. But that dream's been wiped off for the people there. It's gone. So for whatever reason, they can't move in there, or it's been made too expensive, or it's been forbidden, or the person who owned that is living overseas and doesn't want to sell it. This is also a common thing. So the builders and the European architects, the celebrity architects, are being ushered around. And the irony of this, to me, it was amazing. Most people would miss it, but it says the cradle of the civilization. So they're advertising this new tower block, which is going to go up, which will look very nice for a couple of years, but when the pollution from Beirut kicks in, it's going to look horrible, like most new buildings in big cities. But the cradle of civilization is in the foundations. That building would probably be about 30 stories, up to 50 meters down, parking garages, foundations, limestone, sandstone. This is the main. So the journalist I showed you before, Habib, he stopped a major building project downtown. He found the Roman wall, but no one else saw it because the building company built a fence around it, and they were just going to jackhammer that thing and get rid of it out for scrap. And he found it, got the project stopped. So they've moved some of the stuff, and a couple of years later, the project's back on. But what's being lost because of this stuff, luxury flats, which only being lived in for a few months a year by the people that own them, who are from Saudi Arabia or wherever, okay? Our history, the world's history, Lebanon's history, it's being destroyed at a rate that you can't imagine. You know, answers to old questions. Who knows? Who knows what civilizations predated the Greeks or the Sumerians? They're all here. They were all in this region. And this is a really difficult issue. It's a hard one to face. And this is how the graffiti artists are dealing with it. So this is one of those protective barriers around a building site. So, and it is. The country, like many countries, is run by 3 or 4 billionaires, a mafia, and in conjunction with the state apparatus. They don't have a central government at the moment in Lebanon. And this is the last fishing port on the Corniche. You can see it's the last one. It used to be 1.5 miles of jetties, and well, the fishermen would go out every morning, and after the war, that was paved over. They put a highway on, and this little thing still exists down in Isla Maraisi. Beautiful, but beautiful, but it's kind of depressing, but beautiful in its context, surrounded by all this soulless architecture. And this is the vision of the builders. You know, this is what they want. And here we come to the real clash of civilizations. It's not Christianity and Islam. It's not the West and the East. The real clash of civilizations, the real thing that we're going to have to come to grips with is to somehow to find a compromise between traditionalism and modernity. Okay, that is the real battleground when you get down to the basics, okay? And that is this obsession with all that is shiny and new. We have this in this country too. You go by modern flats. You see how they market it. You know, modern flats. Oh, I'd love to live in one of those. So I would call it a fetish. It's almost to the point of fetish. It's beyond obsession. And there's some people that they really have this complex. Now, this is one of our great thinkers, I'm told. His name's Thomas Friedman, best-selling author. He wrote a book in 1999 called The Lexus and the Olive Tree. It was the first big treatise on globalization that came out in the New York Times bestseller list. So he's meant to be one of our great thinkers. He's an international expert on globalization and national security. I see him every weekend on the news, okay? He's paid to go all over the place and speak. And if you look at closely, the reason I picked this slide, look in the background. It says Center for Strategic and International Studies. Okay, that's a neocon think tank. They create the policy and they do the number crunching for the Pentagon and allow politicians to do their thing on the road to war. So he gets paid to speak there, and he's the School of Journalism at, I think, Texas Christian University. So let's listen to what he says. He's one of our great thinkers, I'm told anyway. Let's hear.
They're a phenomenon we've seen before, which is that Sunnis and Shiites in Iraq simply cannot live together. And that's why we keep winning the war. Iraq invasion, we win the war, we lose the peace. The surge, we win the war, we lose the peace. Now again, we're going to win the war. You know when the most difficult moment for us with ISIS is going to happen? If we defeat them. Because then you are going to see the mother of all civil wars between Sunnis and Sunnis, Shiites and Shiites, for who controls that area.
But you know, even as I listen to you, how complicated it is, how is the...
Okay, I can't take much more of that. But, so he said, this is one of the great thinkers. He'll be like, if they had a TED Talk, for all-star TED Talk, he'd be on the lineup, okay? So, you know, he's the darling of Guardian readers and everything. The New York Times, New Yorker magazine, whatever. They love him. He's actually on staff at the New York Times as a writer. Sunnis and Shiites in Iraq can't get along. They can't live together, he says. This is our great expert on international affairs. That's a great analysis. Good job, Thomas. Really deep. I expected a lot more. And then he says, oh, when we defeat ISIS, then you're going to have the mother of all civil wars. Oh, you know, and you see this theme throughout all the mainstream coverage, throughout all the academia. Just complete denial. Complete denial that there's any government or intelligence agency hand at play in any of these organizations or terrorist groups. This is verboten in terms of their level of analysis. Because if they cross that line, then they risk destabilizing the consensus reality. And the consensus reality is what he is selling, okay? And he's paid a lot and handsomely for that. I like a lot of his stuff. In fact, I like his book on globalization, but I disagree with him vehemently on that point. The divide between Sunnis and Shiites has been exacerbated, if not created, by our foreign policy in the United States and NATO members, okay? And it's a long, long agenda. It's been going on for 100 years or more, maybe before that. So I disagree with him. I'll be happy to debate him on that subject, but I probably never will or be allowed to. So I go into the underpass, and I've been walking miles and miles on foot for weeks, and I just got obsessed with this, looking at street art. And I saw this, and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. Before I die, I want Lebanon to be, and this, bear in mind, this is a country that's been through serious trials and tribulations, okay? They could have lost their state in a way that Libya had or that Syria might, okay? And so everyone's gone up there, and they've also got next to it in Arabic, so it's the bilingual chalkboard. This is in an underpass. This is where the traffic just going through. And you get up close and you read some of this stuff, and that's when it really hit me. And I'm reading all this stuff. Some of it's funny, some of it's really serious. Before I die, I want Lebanon to stop war. That's right there in the middle. And there's some beautiful stuff, and it's all around. It's all around the whole concrete pillar. And this gets back to the traditionalism and modernism. We still have ideas and desires to advance in technology, to innovate, to go to the moon. I don't want to get on a debate of that subject, but come and talk to me afterwards, I'll tell you about it. Or to getting to Mars, if we can get through the Van Allen radiation belt. But that's a natural thing for humans. You know, how it's managed on the ground, though, is problematic in many ways. But did you know that Lebanon had a space program in the 1960s? So I saw this stencil, the Lebanese Rocket Society, paying homage to their space program, which started off as a rocket program, and it got shut down by the US government because they were afraid that they would advance to long-range missiles. So, there's a replica of the last launch. It's at Haigazian University in downtown Beirut. It's in their courtyard. And that was done by the university. That was the Lebanese Rocket Society. And they'd have launches on the weekend. People would come out, bring the picnic by the beach and watch it in the 60s. No more. So they could be, that's a very innovative society, by the way. They could be advanced in technology beyond what Britain is, maybe if they were allowed to. But they're not being allowed to. And they see this all over, you see this repeated in many of these countries. And it says in the middle, what I want, before I die, I want Lebanon to be, and it says perfect. And you can't help, it's who wouldn't? And so you see a bombed out building, and then you see this down an alleyway. Incredible. The diversity, the creativity, the sophistication, the color, the art, the artisanship. Amazing. Talk about adapting. And this was the last building I'll show you. This was there's a kind of a bullet or some kind of a shell hole in the middle there. And this is on the way out of town. This is a building that has obviously been in the line of fire, probably. And that's what they painted on the side. There's a desire there from the street artist. So they're showing you problems. They're showing you American culture. You see hip hop. You see all sorts of stuff. And then you also see this. Okay? I've seen things like this in Portobello. And I've seen the council come and sandblast over it. But here, they've left it. No one's sandblasting over that. If they're going to sandblast that, they'll have to knock the building down. I can tell you that for certain. Now, I interviewed a guy named, great thinker, named Gilad Atzmon a couple years ago. And I asked him, I said, what about the Palestinian issue? What's your idea on that? He's a great writer, by the way, if you have a chance to get his books. And he said, he's all, you know what? He's all, I've almost given up on the Palestinian issue. And he's an Israeli living in London. And he's probably one of the greatest saxophone players, in my opinion, who's alive, and also one of the greatest political analysts. And he said, you know what? He's all, the problem with the Palestinian issue, me living in here, or for British people living in there, he's all, there are people in London or in the city who will just as soon walk over somebody who's dying on the ground, but be they homeless or whatever, or getting evicted, their neighbor getting evicted because everyone's afraid to step out of what's going to happen to them. He's all, when we start caring about our neighbors, then we can start worrying about the Palestinians. We got to get our house in order, our priorities at home, before we can project our do-gooder sort of operations in foreign countries. And, you know, I took that to heart. I've lived in a community in Brixton for a few years. It's a fantastic place to live. But it's going through a real trauma right now. A lot of people aren't aware of it. There's a serious move to gentrify Brixton. And you could say it's light, ethnic cleansing light. There's people being taken out of their homes and relocated to Leeds, to Lancashire. Imagine. I mean, that's a tight community. They're ripping it to pieces. And so I realized what's happening in Lebanon or Syria, there's a version of that happening right here. And in Brixton's a good example. I started looking into this last year, and I did some interviews. I'm working on a film. I don't know how long it's going to take to make, but I did a short edit of it, and I want to share that with you if I can. Just to show you, and bear in mind, think of World War II history, what happened to London during the Blitz. When you watch this, think about that. And think about the Windrush as well.
Let me explain something to you. Brixton was an illustrious place a while back, a good while back. You can only look at the buildings, you can look at the architecture around it, you can see what was going down. Coach houses and theatres and a bohemian city at Rushcroft Road. And to this day, it's still got that stigma, it's still there. After the bombs dropped on it, and it got mashed down, it was dilapidated, Lambeth took some serious blows, bruv. And then when the people from the Caribbean were asked to come over to rebuild the whole country's infrastructure, the one place that they could go and stay was Brockdown, Mashup, Bruck bent up, Brixton. So look at it now.
I mean, culturally, there's not many places in London that are the same as this. I mean, what has happened in places like Hackney, where there was a great cultural melting pot as well, just like Brixton, but that's been sort of sold off as well. And we can't keep selling off places like this and gentrifying places. It's slowly moving out from the centre of London, and the gentrification is moving out, and people are being pushed away from hubs, community hubs, which this is, which Brixton is. It's got to stay that way.
That should be a good demonstration. That's happening now. So, okay. Okay, that's a lot to digest, okay? But I think the point I was trying to make should be self-evident, okay? Now, and I encourage people to look into this issue. They literally went in, served eviction notices to all the shops under the arches along Atlantic Road. This is a world-famous market. People come from all over the world to visit it, and they're being turfed out, okay? So, unfortunately, nothing they can do about it. And will be replaced by national chains, maybe, that can pay 3 times the rent, okay? So, I'll give you a crash course now on the media and politics in 15 minutes. So I spend quite a few months a year in America. Okay, so this is one of our presidential candidates on the Republican side, Ted Cruz. Probably not my favorite, but what's interesting about this picture is that. And so this is at one of his last big rallies, and they put this lady right up front, right next to Ted Cruz for 30 minutes on national TV. Do you think it's just a coincidence she's wearing this T-shirt? Of course not, okay? Is Ted Cruz, has the Israeli lobby contributed lots of money to his political campaigns over the years? Absolutely. I stand with Israel. So this is the overriding, most dominant theme in terms of anything foreign policy related in America. All these guys have to dance to that drum because the checkbook is there and it's being written. However, I think because of the popularity of this theme and talking point, there is now a lobby which has emerged, which is actually much better financed than the Israeli lobby, okay? They're moving down to number 2. This is the new lobby, okay? This is Prince Turki. This is a Saudi prince who just this week started lecturing Americans on democracy. And he said, please, whatever you do, don't vote for this guy, Donald Trump. It would be a disaster and so forth. And I thought to myself, wow, I just couldn't wait to start writing about this one. So let's talk about Saudi Arabia's democratic credentials. I could do a nice bullet-pointed presentation to you right now. Suffice to say, it's been a record year for beheadings in the kingdom under the new King Salman. Oh, there he is. So I didn't want to leave them out. Of course, so what's greasing the wheels with Saudi Arabia? David would know. He goes over for a lot of trips to the UAE, to Saudi Arabia. A lot of big deals had to be put in place before last March. What happened last March? What began last March was Saudi Arabia started to bomb their neighbor Yemen into the Stone Age, okay? And of course, David played a role as a sales rep, like Tony Blair did before him, for the arms industry, for BAE Systems and whoever else. So he's talking to his buddy, his fellow Bullingdon Club chum, Boris, the next prime minister, who knows, God forbid. And this is the reality. Over the last 12 months, Saudi Arabia has spent $33 billion on arms, almost exclusively between the United States and Britain. The timing of this war, the last 13 months, the war in Yemen, the arms sales, the fear-mongering with Iran across the Persian Gulf, this is how the system works. We create the sectarian divide. Our governments do, not us. Our governments do. The Shiite versus Sunni, the Iran versus Saudi, the Iran versus Israel, create the tension, jack the fear up, the media play their role to keep that fear clear and present, and look who arrives at the doorstep, the arms sales rep. Oh, so what about, those F-15s are out of date. What you really need is the new Eurofighter or the F-16 or our Tornadoes or our pavement missiles or whatever. And our AWACS planes, don't worry, we'll send our guys to staff it. In fact, we'll have American engineers. We'll refuel your planes for the bombing runs so we don't have to actually do the bombing. So the U.S. is essentially, in Britain, the Atlanticists have outsourced, finally, their fighting to a local partner. Fantastic. Profits for everybody. Plus, all the aid and reconstruction, which I can't calculate. To rebuild Syria or Yemen, who's going to get those contracts? So this is the loser in all this. This is a Yemeni kid. Now, I applaud ITV for doing a sort of a good report on Yemen last month. Not bad, could be better. So here's Prince Turki again, and he's sitting there. This is at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy Studies, another great think tank. He's sitting with former Israeli Major General Yaakov Amidror, who presided, I believe, over one of those massacres in Gaza. I think it was in 2012. Maybe 550 people were massacred in Gaza by the IDF. So he's there with Prince Turki. Turns out these guys have a lot in common. They get on very well, by the way, the Saudis and the Israelis. This is one of the strongest partnerships now, geopolitically. Jews and Arabs. Who would have thought, right? They have a lot in common. They both like using these as well. So this is a photo I took in South Lebanon. These are cluster bombs. They're old. I think these are from the 2006 war. So Israel, on the last day, in fact, even after the peace treaty was agreed on, or the truce was agreed on, they dropped thousands upon thousands of cluster bombs all over the south. And the UN, the MAG landmine group that cleans this stuff up, they're still cleaning up from the 80s and 90s up in the hills and places. So they asked for the maps of the Israeli fighting sorties, because obviously if you had the flight records, it'd be easier to find out where the unexploded munitions are. They wouldn't give them, not even to the UN. They cited maybe strategic reasons or intelligence or something like that. And when I was there 2 weeks before, I think a kid one exploded. They looked like toys. Vanessa did a good report with this at the UN in Geneva. So kids go and play with them. It reminds me of Guernica, when a lot of people may not be aware, the Nazis, because they were part of the Treaty of Versailles was that Germany couldn't have an air force. So they used gliders, and they practiced their bombing, did a few jobs for Franco. And they used to drop, this is a true story, they used to drop candy that had some sort of a cheap pipe bomb or shrapnel in it. Kids would run up to it, and this is what happened in Spain during the Spanish Civil War. So this is the modern version of that. Okay, millions of cluster bombs, millions have not been cleaned up in South Lebanon alone. I went down and saw some of this for myself. There's my president with the new King Salman, best of buddies, of course. So no Arab Spring, unfortunately, for Saudi Arabia. And I always wondered, why is John McCain always calling for war? And why do I see him photographed with Syrian terrorists? I see him with neo-Nazis in the Ukraine. This guy's interesting. He sure gets around. But what's his interest in Syria? To help the moderate rebels. And I saw this just came out in Bloomberg News. So $1 million from Saudi Arabia. Campaign contributions, nonprofit group, some NGO he's partnered or works with. That probably goes a long way, $1 million, in getting him to do the bidding of the coalition. Of course, that's the coalition. It's a lot bigger than just the United States, Britain, and the Faroe Islands, and whoever else is in there. Bermuda, I don't know. So, and this is the president of Syria, and he put it so eloquently. And I thought, wow, I wish we had leaders like this. He said, the West deals with terrorism in a hypocritical way. So they call it terrorism when it hits them, and revolution, freedom, and democracy and human rights when it hits us. That's Bashar al-Assad. He's more or less said the same thing in an interview with Charlie Rose. I think he's a lot smarter than our media or politicians give him credit for. I would say so. Yeah. Love to have him in Parliament. So, and here's the deal, okay? The U.S. are complaining. This came out in Associated Press. They're struggling because 1 out of 3 Iraqis think that the U.S. is backing ISIS. They're really panicking. They're really upset about this, by the way. And they're making all sorts of apologies in there. Oh, well, God, why aren't they more grateful for all that we've done for them in Iraq? I mean, we tried to, we got rid of Saddam, right? It was a good thing, supposedly. So the media are in fits. They can't just come out and say it was a total failure and just chastise everybody in the last 2 administrations. They don't want to do that because they won't get invited to the National Press Dinner in Washington, okay? You'd think this is in Hollywood. No, this is in Washington. That's someone getting out of their limo, probably the president, I'm not sure. But this is the politics, celebrity and politics have fused together now. This is not a good development, okay? And so the media are playing softball more and more with our political leaders. And so this is the red carpet affair. This is from the White House press correspondents' dinner. Will Smith taking a selfie. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think Will Smith is doing at the White House press correspondents' dinner? Who does Will Smith bear a very striking resemblance to? I'm just putting that out. You might see a film, maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure, but I would put my money on that film, that legacy film next year, maybe with this guy starring as you-know-who. There's an award-winning journalist from CNN in the audience at the press dinner giving the finger to the host, Don Lemon from CNN. So, and then Obama comes out, interestingly, last week. Listen to this. He's talking about Donald Trump. Listen to what he says.
Who would occupy this house, this office, come January 2017, 9 months from now? Here is President Obama on a possible President Trump.
I just want to emphasize the degree to which we are in serious times, and this is a really serious job. This is not entertainment. This is not a reality show. There is no doubt that there is a debate that's taken place inside the Republican Party about who they are and what they represent. Their standard bearer at the moment is Donald Trump.
Reporters asked the president to respond to this tweet by Trump eating a Taco Bell on Cinco de Mayo, complete.
Okay, so essentially the president's saying this isn't a reality show. That's the words he used. 72 hours before he just made that speech to the American people. 72 hours before, this is what our president was doing. Making his Saturday Night Live spoof videos in the White House. So he's walking through with the former Speaker of the House who's got a drink in his hand, making jokes about having a beer at 11:30 in the morning, saying the F word, having it beeped out, Obama, okay, with his shades on. They're playing that cool music, and they're just walking. So I came from the Middle East, sitting in traffic, watching armies of 5-year-old homeless girls and little boys begging to cars, almost getting killed half the time, run over, refugees from a conflict that we have created, without a doubt, okay, with partners, of course. And then I come home and I see this. Talk about culture shock. And it really hit me. It doesn't hit the average American because we live in a bubble 90% of the time. Who's paying for this, by the way? I don't know. Who paid for this expensive video, spoof videos to be? So this is what you're dealing with. So he comes out calling Donald Trump a reality TV show. This guy's done more acting on the taxpayer dime than Ronald Reagan could ever imagine. Okay? And he's not a very good actor, by the way. He's good at acting. He's good at, his best acting role is president. But when he tries to be funny, it's not that funny. So that's what I saw couple weeks before. This is what I was passing on a daily basis. Okay? This is how deep this goes. This is a hit program called Madam Secretary in America. This was released last year. Very popular series. This is basically backdoor campaigning for Hillary Clinton via one of the studios who developed this show. So what they've done here in the consensus reality world is to create the idealized version of Hillary Clinton. And you're meant to project that on her. That's not her, but it's the idealized avatar of Hillary Clinton. It's very, very clever, but this is in your face, okay? There's no doubt what this program was. It was to make her look more palatable and at least plant the idea in people's minds that the Madam Secretary is a likable, affable person. But we know who the real Madam Secretary is. This is the real Madam Secretary, okay? This is her outburst after watching Muammar Gaddafi killed in the streets in cold blood. And what it's done, this is another program called Homeland, another big hit, okay? And so this was the episode in Lebanon where the American girl comes and she puts the scarf on her head. If you go to Lebanon, most women don't wear scarves on their head, most of them, okay? So this is kind of a joke. But this is designed to instill fear in the American or the European audience to think that this is a backward country, it's full of Islamic extremists, don't go there. Don't even think about going there because you have to cover up like her. Her super spy, a CIA character. What a joke. Here's one of CNN's award-winning journalists. She snuck into the rebel-held areas in Aleppo and filmed this award-winning, hard-hitting, whatever. This is Clarissa Ward, award-winning journalist. She's wearing a costume, okay? Okay, if you're going to Jeddah or Riyadh, that's how you would dress if you're a woman. But it's not Riyadh or Jeddah. It's northern Syria, okay? And I don't know what the deal was with her, but I don't know. All I can say is don't think that there are not people who work or on the payroll of the intelligence agencies in the highest levels of broadcast television, newspapers, and mainstream media, because it's always been that way. That's documented. Do you think they stopped that policy at any point? But again, she's there to make you afraid. This guy, this is 6 different pictures. This is the same guy. Does anyone know who this guy is? I don't know. He's very popular with the networks. Just to lighten things up, there's no difference between what I just showed you here and this. He's acting again. You see him in lots of movies. So when they run out of crisis actors, that will be the last one, Anderson Cooper. This happened while I was in the Middle East, Brussels bombing. Famous picture, first picture released, was taken by this woman, who is actually, that's her after the Charlie Hebdo. She's part of the time, she's worked as a photographer for NATO. She happened to be 10 feet away from the blast. Of course, she didn't get hurt, but she got all these fantastic pictures that got satellite beamed all over the world in the split second, okay? That's her. I can't pronounce her name. You can read about her on our website. So this is essentially, this is Gladio. How do I know? Because I downloaded the playbook. Okay, this is not for sale. It's out of print. It's called Gangs and Counter Gangs. This is by Major Frank Kitson, talking about the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya. This is the playbook. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, these are not organic. This is not a tribal fighting force. This is a military operation following military template developed by people like this, okay? You can get this book. You can download it as an ebook, print it out yourself, which I did. But it's Gladio. That's the precursor to Gladio. Gladio, you might or may not be familiar, stay behind operation. Here's another alternative media outlet, Vice News. Have you seen this? Anybody? It's very cool. They're targeting the millennials. That's Shane Smith, their founder. Okay? 70 million they got in seed funding. I'll tell you who it was from. Then he got 200 million from Hearst Corporation and Disney through a private equity firm. Only a 20% stake for 400 million. Okay, that's a total of that's $500 million for this alternative media outlet, which is carried by HBO and others. So who gave him the first 70 million seed funding? 21st Century Fox, run by that man, Rupert Murdoch. And the kids are meant to think this is the cutting edge of media, Vice. So what do I say to the guy who runs Vice here? What else can you say? You got your seed funding from Rupert Murdoch. So puppets, building puppets, signifying simulacra, layers veiling the real power structure, Jay Dyer. Okay, this is so true. This is what we're seeing. Mainstream versus alternative. I'm going to piss some people off right now. Let's get to the alternative media. Okay? Nice headline. Putin is ready to show proof that 9/11 was an inside job. Here's another one. Putin's 2016 New Year's speech. I'm going to defeat the Illuminati. Jacob Rothschild. Putin's a traitor to the New World Order. You'd love all these stories to be true, wouldn't you? And these are shared thousands of times on Facebook. Okay? Much more than anything I've ever printed or shared. Here's another one. Court takes child from mother after she mentions chemtrails at school. Guess what? This is a fake story. Look how many shares it got on Facebook. This is from metabunk.com. 14,000 shares. People have a hunger. Maybe this is what they want to think is true. But is it? No, it's not. And I know some people enjoy reading this stuff, but all I can say at this point, and you're probably going to hate me because I'm going to show you which website. Some of you might like this website. yournewswire.com. I'm just going to put it up there. This is one of their greatest headlines. Putin orders 100,000 troops with atomic weapons to prepare for NATO to attack CERN, the Hadrian Collider in Switzerland. Okay? I'm sorry if that offends people that I've showed this. All I can say is we have to grow up. Okay? There's a lot of money in fake news. The mainstream media will tell you that. There's no money in the truth. What is the truth? I don't know. It's time to open your eyes. Ian did a talk, Apocalypse, great title. It'll be with me forever in 2012, the unveiling. Okay, this has happened. This is already set in motion. Okay, everything I showed you in the last 8 slides is fake. It's fake. This is real. This is an old stencil on a wall in Beirut. Love is our resistance. That's real. The rest, it's fake. And we need to start facing that now. And decide, we're going to put our energy in what's real, and we have to discard some of this other stuff because it is just taking us away from our mission. Okay? This is my show on Sundays, and I've done something which I've wanted to do for years. We just launched a membership drive today or this week, and we're working on it. We're going to roll out some interesting things. It's been hard the last 6 years, but I sacrificed everything, and I gave up everything I had and everything I wanted, but I'm happy I did it, because this is the first job where I wake up and I can't wait to get to work. So I finally found that job. Thank you.
Well, what can I say? I mean, Patrick's been out there on the front line, and he went to Syria. He's not a keyboard warrior. He's not one who relies on other feeds. He actually gets out there, boots on the ground, sees it for himself. And that's the way it has to be. Absolutely the way it has to be. And I'm so glad you discussed the fake news stories, because it's a great way for the establishment to get a feel for what people want to think is true, and then they will counter that. And the other thing is that, again, Patrick shows the book. I don't think any of us who comment on the geopolitical arena claim any special insight. We've simply read the scripts. The scripts are all out there, because the belief system of these ruling parasites, their belief system is that they have to tell us what it is they're going to do. And once they've told us what they're going to do, and we do nothing to prevent them from doing it, that's effectively us giving them a mandate to go ahead. The most powerful tools that they have available are in our hands. And a big one is apathy. A massive one is apathy, and we've got to step through that. Okay, we're going to take a very, very short break. Thank you so much, Patrick. Patrick literally landed from the States yesterday morning. So